There you go. Sometimes I have to be reminded.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, so Rudy, you got this cute little dog. And Rudy set this, I want to compliment you on this because you set it up right. Your background is a long way off. So the further your background is away from the subject, the more you're going to be able to blow it out of focus. And this was at 4.5. And what lens were you using, Rudy? Do you remember?
Yes, I was using the lens, I think it's 18 to 200.
18 to 200. Okay. Okay, good. And so it started at 4.5, and you see the background is pretty good on the blown out. And then here we go to the 5.6, and notice no change in exposure at all. So you did a great job. Oh, going back to 4.5, I want you to watch this power line right back up here. See where my cursor is? So watch the fence and also watch the power line. So here's 5.6, no loss in exposure. Pictures look exactly the same. Here's your 6.3, same thing. Pictures look exactly the same, no loss in exposure. So you balanced your meter exactly right. And then we come to F8 and still no loss in exposure. Pictures look exactly alike. And then here we go into F11 and then 16 and then 22 finally. And notice at 22, we can finally see the back slats on the fence and see that power line that we couldn't really see in the first 4.5. But in this 22, we can see it. So you did an absolutely dynamite job on this one, Rudy. Any comments on how you did it or challenges?
Yeah, you have to you have to use a tripod and make sure that you kept it in the same place. And that way you got the consistent.
Yeah. Well, you did. You kept the consistency all the way through it. And then you got super, super high tech with the water, but it works. So starting at 1/8 of a second, and you notice how the water is just a kind of a stream. We get a little bit of detail in the water right up there, but otherwise it's just kind of a stream. And then F8, 1/8 of a second. So this would have been just a little faster, and noticing that we're starting to see some of the detail in the water. Still haven't lost exposure though. So you're keeping that camera nice and steady. And here it is at a 60th of a second. And we're even starting, if you look real closely, to see some little droplets forming right down in here, but not losing any exposure at all, keeping everything consistent. And then here we go into the 1/25th of a second, and the stream is starting to break up right there into drops. And then 2/50th of a second, you're getting nice drops all the way down in there. And didn't lose your exposure anywhere through it. So you did a phenomenal job. Very, very good on that one. So
yeah, this one was challenging because you can go so far under the same ISO, and then once you get to a certain point, you need to switch it. I wanted to keep everything under the same.
yeah, and you did. So you didn't change your ISO. You just, and it was kind of nice too, because it appears as though you did this on maybe a slightly overcast day. So we don't have any harsh shadows or anything like that. So you did a good job. Real good job. And then here's yours, Bonnie, on yours. And once again, I only got to download a couple of them. But this one, and I couldn't open them up to see exactly what shutter speed you were using, but we've got a pretty good formation in the water coming up through here. So you did a good job there.
I have to say, I learned by doing, so I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I felt like I had a couple of aha moments.
Good. And then this one, you obviously changed angles, not on a tripod, but then you can see that we've got some formation in this water. So this is definitely on the faster shutter speed side. And once again, I'm sorry, I couldn't open them up.
No,
I didn't have enough time this evening.
Not your fault, my fault.
Yeah. And then here we can see where the water is just turned into complete silky water there. So you see the differences in those shutter speeds.
Right.
And then you use the scimitar, and I think I got these in order. So I did them by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then here's the fence back here. So I assume this is like a 3.5 or a 4.5.
I think it was, I started with a 4.5.
4.5, good, good. And then the fence back here, we can see it's out of focus. So that's called the bokeh of how blurred it is. And then focus isn't quite tight on this because it's not totally in focus. See right here, we've got some of this in focus. So it's kind of hard to say exactly where your focus is. Probably should have been right there. And then this one, the exposure change, but I think it's better. And then the focus is definitely much better.
Mhm.
And then moving around just a little bit. So you weren't on a tripod,
No, I wasn't.
dual.
I had a stool, correct.
And then this one, though, it has nice focus in it. So that's a good thing. Background still out of focus. So just moving a little bit on the depth of field. And then here we moved a little bit more, but this one's got better focus on the little scimitar. And then the background still is not totally in focus yet. And this one just kind of moving around a little bit, but keeping your exposure roughly the same. There you go. And then lost it on this one. So,
That was my last one. Yeah, I lost it on that.
and
Right.
probably the shutter speed was slow at this
Right.
point. And so
Yeah.
too much for you to handhold.
It was slow, correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So good job. What'd you learn on that homework, Bonnie?
Well, I think I got a lot better, and it sounds like such a simple thing, but with the light metering, and I didn't start out better, but I got better.
Good.
It just got better.
Good.
And it was fun with the water. I thought that was interesting. And yeah, so I feel like I learned the camera a lot better, and
Good.
and I watched your whole video again yesterday. So I
Yeah.
had yesterday off and today. So I watched the whole thing again yesterday.
Good, 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 good. Okay. Okay. Let me see. As you started working with your camera, Rudy, any questions on buttons or dials?
No, I think we went through it pretty extensively last class. I was pretty good on that one.
Okay. So once you started working with it, everything felt pretty good.
Yes.
Okay, super, super, very good. And Bonnie, any questions on any dials or buttons on your camera as you started working on it?
Not really. I learned more as I worked with it and
Good.
solved some of my own issues or questions.
Good, good. And you both noticed that you have homework after this lesson also.
I
And
saw
so that gives, you won't share these with me unless you want to, but this gives you some more homework to work on. So one more challenge for you to work on. So tonight, what we're going to talk about is we're going to cover some of the different camera operations and what they mean. And then tripods, and then we're going to cover lenses, and then why I've set you on certain settings on your cameras. So first of all, up on the top of your cameras, both of you, you have you might have something like this on Rudy's camera. So you might have like a lady and a land and a mountain and a tulip and stuff like that. And then you've got an M and an AV, TV, and a P. And Bonnie, you've got an M, an A, an S, and a P. You see that up there?
Yes.
Okay. I don't necessarily want you to rotate anything right now, but I just want you to listen to me. I've got you in the M mode right now. And the M mode is where you're in charge of the f-stop and you're in charge of the shutter speed and you're balancing your light meter. So the manual mode is where you're totally in charge. I would like you to stay in the manual mode for maybe the next month or so until you feel real comfortable explaining to yourself which f-stop I use and which shutter speed you use and why you use one shutter speed and one f-stop over the other. Manual mode, over the years, I have had people tell me, I'm so glad you made me stay in manual because I really learned how to use my camera. And so the manual mode is where you are totally in charge. On the other hand, the A mode up on top, So that's A in Bonnie's camera and AV in Rudy's camera. This is the aperture priority mode. And Bonnie, you have your camera in front of you?
I do.
You do? Okay. And Rudy, if you've got your camera in front of you when you come back, rotate that. Are you all both at 5.6 right now?
I'll tell you in a minute. Oh, I have to turn it on. That would be helpful. Hang on. No, but I can get there.
Okay, get to 5.6.
Okay, I'm there.
Okay, good. Everybody's at 5.6. Rudy, you're at 5.6. Okay, if you rotate that dial on the top to the A, Rudy, yours is AV, Bonnie, yours is A. This is aperture priority. An aperture priority is where you set the f-stop and the camera now balances the light meter for you with the shutter speed. So if you'll put your eye up to the viewfinder of the camera and push your button halfway down and point your camera around the room to dark areas and light areas and shadowed areas, brighter areas, you'll notice that the f-stop stays exactly the same, but the shutter speed changes. See that? So the f-stop and aperture priority, you set that. And then the camera balances the light meter for you with the shutter speed. So when you look through your viewfinder right now, do you see your light meter scale in the bottom where it usually shows up?
No.
No. Rudy, you see it? You're muted, Rudy, on me.
It's not there.
Okay.
I see it, but it's staying in the middle.
Yay. Okay. In Nikon, when you're in aperture priority, as long as your meter is balanced, you do not see your light meter. In Canon, when you're in aperture priority, you see your light meter and it's right in the middle. So aperture priority is for when you know what f-stop you want and you're letting the camera set the shutter speed accordingly. And if the shutter speed's not fast enough, then you would raise your ISO. So that's what aperture priority is. So aperture priority, we're walking through a bluebonnet field and we have the camera on a tripod and we just want to do a large expanse of bluebonnets, then we would set the f-stop on 22 or 32, put the camera on a tripod, and now we would just walk around the bluebonnet field, composing up our scenes and just taking our pictures. If we wanted to do just little portraits of individual bluebonnets, then we would set the f-stop on 5.6. Camera might be on a tripod, depending on how much wind we had or how much light we had. And now you can just walk around and just work on photographing little portraits of bluebonnets at 5.6. So aperture priority is when you know what f-stop you need. You still have to pay attention to the shutter speed. There's nothing magic about the shutter speed. You still have to pay attention to it, make sure it's enough. If it's not high enough, then you just punch your ISO button and you raise your ISO. And Rudy, on your camera, you notice that your ISO button has that little bitty bump in the middle of it. So you always know where that ISO button is without even having to take your eye off the viewfinder. So that's aperture priority. Shutter priority, on the other hand, is the TV. If you are in Rudy's camera, and it's the S in Bonnie's camera. So if you would rotate that dial to TV or S. And now, by the way, when you rotate to TV or A, your command dial changes your shutter speed or your f-stop. So your command dial. Rudy, when you go into shutter priority, TV, your front dial controls your shutter speed. And Bonnie, when you go into TV, shutter priority, your camera only has one dial, right? And a plus minus button, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that dial now changes your shutter speed. When you're in aperture priority, Rudy, your front dial changes your f-stop, and Bonnie, your front dial changes your aperture. So that's called your command dial. Excuse me, Bonnie, yours is your back dial. Rudy, yours is your front dial. So in shutter priority, if you would, rotate the dial to shutter priority, the TV mode. And now using your command dial, Bonnie, that's your back dial. Rudy, that's your front dial. Rotate your shutter speed to 60th of a second shutter speed. Rotate your shutter speed to 60. And now when you're on 60, look around your room. And do you notice your light meter is showing, or do you notice that your f-stop is blinking at you?
Wait,
My f-stop is blinking.
Good. And does your light meter show up out of balance or imbalance?
The light meter is in balance, but the f-stop is blinking.
F-stop's blinking, exactly. So Bonnie, when you're in shutter priority and you use a 60th of a second shutter speed, what's happening through your viewfinder?
through the viewfinder, nothing, but when I look on the back, the f-stop it's moving around.
Okay.
4.5.
Correct. But when you look through the viewfinder, do you see your f-stop blinking at you, or is your light meter scale out of balance?
Okay, well, it was, now it's gone completely. So hold, oh wait, let me put my,
Push your button halfway down.
oh, there we go. So the f-stop is, there's a dot blinking to the far left.
No, is your f-stop blinking?
No, it just says F and then 5.6 and it's steady and it says 60.
And it says 60. And is your light meter scale in balance or out of balance?
It's not even showing up.
It's not showing up. Okay. Bonnie, point your camera down at the ground at 60th of a second. Is your
Right.
f-stop, through the viewfinder? Is it blinking?
Ah, now it's blinking and I do have a light meter showing now.
Okay, very good.
Blinking, yes.
Yes. So shutter priority is where you set the shutter speed and the camera sets the f-stop for you. But if the camera doesn't have enough light to set the shutter speed to where the meter is balanced, it'll blink at you on the f-stop, trying to tell you, I got a problem, I need you to do something. It's trying to get your attention that something's wrong. So shutter priority is when you set the shutter speed, but if you set the shutter speed too high for the light you have, and the camera doesn't have enough light, it'll let you take a picture all day long, but it won't balance your light meter because that f-stop is blinking at you. So Bonnie, don't point at that bright object you were at, but point down at your floor or at that wall behind you. Rudy, do the same thing. Point at a wall behind you, not that floor, because I know that floor is really dark under your desk, Rudy, but at a wall behind you. And rotate your shutter speed dial until, look through the viewfinder, Bonnie, rotate that shutter speed dial until the f-stop quits blinking at you. So when you rotate your shutter speed dial, where does it stop when the f-stop quits blinking at you?
It stops at like, is it 1/13 or is it 13?
Yeah, like a 13th of a second.
13th of a second.
Okay, yeah. Where's yours stop, Bonnie?
I'm hold on. Oh, here it stopped. It stopped. It says 5.
About a 1/5 of a second. Okay. Yeah. Now, but if you remember the last week, that's pretty much what we were getting. We were getting those real slow shutter speeds in your rooms.
Right.
And so there's nothing different about using shutter priority or aperture priority or manual. You get the same light meter balance somewhere along the way. But shutter priority just means that you set the shutter speed and the camera sets the f-stop for you, or tries to set the f-stop for you. Now, shutter priority at TV, or S in Bonnie and TV and Rudy, I
Right.
use this in two instances. I don't use shutter priority very much, so I use it in two instances. Would you pop your flash up? That's the little lightning bolt button on the side of your camera. There you go, Rudy, you got it.
And I've never used the flash on this. I'm not sure. I don't even know where it is. I hate to say
You
that.
should
Oh,
over here.
it is. It's right here. It's right here. There we go.
Good.
Got it.
Now, in shutter priority, please rotate your shutter speed dial to 60.
Okay.
And you know how 60th of a second stops living, breathing creatures? We talked about that. Okay. So photograph with your flash popped up, photograph like a, you know, if your cat or your kid is around, photograph them, dogs around, or if there's a little statue around or something like that, just photograph something that's close by.
I
Not
did.
too-
It's
not-
cute.
Not too far away.
It turned out actually pretty good. The
Yeah, it turns
cats-
out pretty good.
Yeah. The cats look cute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let Rudy get his shot.
Okay.
Did it work, Rudy?
So I have my flash up, but
Wow.
it's not firing the flash.
I noticed I didn't see a flash fire.
Yeah, and it says, and I went to my Q settings and it says flash firing is disabled. So maybe I just need to,
Yeah, you might have turned your flash off at some point.
okay. No problem.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So why you would use your flash at 60th of a second is, let's say, you know, you were inside. We know we don't have enough light inside most of the time to take pictures. But you still wanted to photograph your kid or your dog or your cat. And if you pop that flash up and use the 60th of a second, that flash is called a TTNL flash, through the lens metering flash. And that means that that flash knows to go to your focus point. So wherever you focused, the flash is going to send light that far and then turn off. So this is a really smart flash. You got it.
Yes, okay.
Yes, super. Try that again. Just take a couple more pictures around your room. Good. So this is a very, very smart flash. Based on your focus point, that's how far the light goes. And based on your light meter, that's how much light goes out. So one of the places where I use shutter priority is in that 60th of a second shutter speed. I'm inside maybe a party or maybe a family gathering, and I know I don't have enough light, but I'm going to use 60th of a second because that'll stop people. And then I can just walk around and take pictures of people. And depending on how far away they are from their background, the background might be darker or lighter. So this is a good setting just to photograph the pets inside or family inside. I'll show you another one in just a little bit where I use shutter priority, but really I don't use shutter priority very much. While you have your flash popped up, go back to aperture priority, please. So that's your A or your AV, and go back to your 5.6.
Mhm.
Okay. Now do the same thing with your flash popped up. And when you look through the viewfinder, do you see a slow shutter speed or a fast shutter speed?
60.
60. What do you see, Rudy?
A slow shutter speed,
Slow shutter speed, exactly. This is a reason why I don't want you to start rotating that dial right away. This is just one of those programmed features. Now notice, Rudy got a slow shutter speed, but Bonnie, yours went to 60, didn't it?
And we're doing this on A,
On
correct?
A.
Yeah,
correct.
mine is 60, right.
Okay. Pop your flash down, Bonnie, and notice that you get a slow shutter speed.
Oh, two, yeah, two.
Yeah, now pop your flash back up and you notice that it goes to 60.
Yeah, 60, it's right there.
Okay.
Right.
So in Nikons, they are programmed from the factory that if you're in aperture priority and you pop your flash up, whether you like it or not, you're going to use 60th of a second shutter speed.
Ah,
And we don't want to do that. So Bonnie, on your camera, what we're going to do is we're going to unprogram this. Push and hold your plus minus button. And Rudy, this does not apply to Canons.
Okay,
So Bonnie, push and hold your, excuse me, Bonnie, wrong instructions. Push and
Right.
hold your flash button, that little lightning bolt button.
Right. All right, right now, push and hold.
Push and hold. Now look on your back display panel where your menu is.
Yeah,
And there
Oh.
should be a little box that came up for flash, right?
it did.
Now rotate the dial until it says slow flash or rear flash.
Slow. It
Good,
says
let
slow.
go.
Let go.
And now when you look through the viewfinder, you should have a slow shutter speed.
All right, hold on.
Yeah, now look through the viewfinder and you'll see now you've got a slow shutter speed, right?
1.6.
Good. That's exactly what you would have whether you raised your flash or didn't raise your flash.
Oh,
And
okay.
so we have now unprogrammed something that the factory set for you. In other words, Nikon kind of didn't want you to ever mess up your flash pictures. Well,
Right.
sometimes we want to use a slow flash. So I've unprogrammed that. And I use that as just a little example to show you that until you know your camera in the manual mode, you won't know by going into the aperture priority mode or shutter priority mode if something is wrong.
Okay.
So that's why I want you to stay in the manual mode until you kind of get a feel for what this camera should be doing. Because then if it starts doing something weird, you can say, this isn't right. This isn't the way it is in manual. And there's not too many of these little things in the cameras. Rudy, you're pretty safe on yours, but Bonnie, that's the biggest bugaboo on the Nikons.
And they programmed it at 60, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
right. Program mode, the P, I don't want you to use at all because you've
Okay.
sat through my class with me and you don't need program mode. So
All right.
program mode, what it does is it sets the f-stop as close to 8 as possible and the shutter speed as close to 60 as possible based on how much light you've got. But it doesn't know what you're photographing. It has no idea if you're photographing a goldfish in a bowl or a kid running a foot race. It doesn't know what in the world you're photographing. So program mode is just worthless. Don't do that at all.
Okay.
Now you notice also that you've got the lady with the hat and you've got the mountain and you've got the little tulip mode and those type of things.
Right.
We're not going to go through them today, but just let me tell you what they are because I don't want you to use them either.
Okay.
These are definitely just, you are throwing away features on your camera if you use these. The lady with the big hair or the lady with the hat, depending on what camera you've got, this is your portrait mode. And
Okay.
portrait mode is where you want to blur out the background.
Mhm.
How do you blur out the background?
oh yes, so you blow out the background, you put your f-stop at like 5.6 or something, and
Yeah.
then that's how you can get a good,
And how far away is your background?
the background should be far away, yes, and then where you can blow
You
it
got
out.
it. You got it. So see, you do not need to use the lady with the hat mode. Okay. The landscape mode is where you're going to get a whole lot of depth of field for a landscape photograph. How do you get a whole lot of depth of field for a landscape photograph?
You put that f-stop at like 22 or 32, something like that.
You got it. And that's all that little mountain does. That's the sole thing that little mountain does. That little tulip mode is your macro mode. But if you'll put your hand in front of your lens and focus on your hand. So put your hand in front of your lens. And Bonnie, you got a longer lens, so you might need longer arms. There you go, zoom back in. How close can you focus on your hand?
Oh,
You might need to focus on a ring or something like that. So don't just zoom back all the way and then focus on your hand. How close can you focus?
This one seems like it's like a half a foot, maybe. I don't know.
About a half a foot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Rudy, if you look on the underside of that lens, it should say somewhere that it focuses to 8 inches.
Okay, yeah, that's about right.
So that's about as close as that lens will focus. Bonnie, did you figure out how close your lens will focus?
I think mine is further away.
And what lens do you have on your camera, Bonnie?
Is the one that came with it?
I know. What are the numbers on it?
Oh, hold on. It's a, let's see here. It's, 5-300 mm, 1.45-5.6. Does that mean anything?
Yeah.
Um,
The numbers on the barrel. What are the numbers on the barrel?
oh, I see.
Yeah.
300, 200, 135, 100, 70, 55.
So yours is a 55 to 300.
Okay.
So that's a 55. So yes, that's going to focus maybe 4 or 5 feet away.
Yeah, I mean, I had to put my arm way over here and it
Yeah,
it
yeah,
started to
yeah.
come into focus, but still not great, right?
No, so it focuses pretty far away, and probably the same thing. If you look underneath the barrel of the lens, it'll tell you how close it focuses. So that little tulip, even though people think that that's the macro mode, it really just, I mean, it's kind of hokey because the lens won't focus any closer with the tulip than it does without the tulip.
Right.
And then the little running man mode just gives you the fastest shutter speed that it can with the highest ISO that it can, so that you can get speed. So that's all that that does. So you don't need any of these.
Right.
And what happens also when you go into any of these other modes is certain features on the camera are deactivated. So you suddenly might remember that Kathy showed you this in class, but you can't get to it anymore. It's grayed out. So they do all kinds of things to keep you from messing up. So don't go into those. Just learn manual, aperture priority, and shutter priority. And once again, I don't use shutter priority for very many things.
Right.
I stay most of the time on aperture priority. So if you can understand this right now, okay? What I do in aperture priority is I set the f-stop I'm going to need for the subject. So if it's a medium-sized bird, I'm going to need an f8 for that. And then I look at my shutter speed based on the f-stop that I just set. And if that's not a fast enough shutter speed, then I raise my ISO. So I am constantly raising and lowering my ISO based on how fast the action is moving. That's the same way that most of the photographers at the Houston Chronicle shoot sports. So if you set your f-stop on 5.6, and when an action begins, we're going to raise our ISO. When we're doing somebody just sitting, looking out of the dugout, then we can lower the ISO because we don't need a fast shutter speed than that for that. So I shoot aperture priority, paying attention to shutter speed, paying attention to ISO to get me a faster shutter speed almost 100% of the time. But I want you to stay on manual until you're getting real good about keeping that light meter balanced. And then you can go ahead and move to either shutter priority or aperture priority, whichever one's going to make you shoot better. Okay.
Okay.
Questions on any of that?
Yeah, you answered my question. Because the shutter priority gives you a clear warning when you don't have enough light, you get the blinking of the f-stop. So I was going to ask you, what do you use in aperture priority to help you make your adjustments? But you just told me the shutter speed.
Yeah. And then you just have to, in your head, know how fast of a shutter speed do I need?
Yes.
And so for instance, I'm watching a hawk on a branch, and that's, I can do that at 1/25th of a second. But that hawk leans over and poops. That says that hawk's going to fly. Okay, so I need to rotate my ISO to get me to a 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000th of a second shutter speed, and I get ready for that hawk to fly. And then after that's all over with, if I got it or didn't get it, then I lower my ISO to bring my shutter speed back down.
Okay.
So just constantly watching what's going on. And then in your cameras, we don't need these, we don't need these. I asked you to set some settings, and I want to explain to you why I did that. So Rudy, you're on AI servo on the
Yes.
back of your camera. And just looking at your menus right here, Rudy, you're on servo right there. And then Bonnie, you're on autofocus continuous, correct?
You know, I was, but I think I changed it to servo. Let me go
Okay,
back.
you don't have servo. Servo's only in Canon.
Oh, auto servo, it says here, auto servo AF, but is that something different?
That's something different, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
let me go back. All
So
right,
you should be an AFC.
let me just go look, hold on. Oh, here I go, AFC, they're
Good.
continuous servo.
Continuous.
Right,
Exactly.
AFC. Okay, there I'm in now, AFC.
Exactly. So let me explain to you why you're in AI servo, Rudy, and Bonnie, why you're in autofocus C, continuous. When
Okay.
you autofocus on a subject and you're holding your camera and you've got that button halfway down to autofocus on your subject, in
Mhm.
AI servo and autofocus continuous, the camera constantly is going back and hitting the subject. So your cat, your dog, your kid moves, the camera will go back and autofocus on them. You move, the camera will go back and autofocus on your subject. So when you're in autofocus continuous or AI servo, you're going to constantly hear your lens focusing. And that's exactly what you want. So you want to stay in autofocus continuous or AI servo. If you go, and do not move your buttons right now, but if you go to autofocus single, Bonnie, or one shot, Rudy, that's the other option in there, then the camera will focus one time on the subject when you push your finger halfway down. And then if your subject moves or you move, the camera will not refocus on them. It's still focused on that point in space. So we do not want to be on one shot or autofocus single, because then your autofocus only focuses on the first thing that it saw and it doesn't follow the subject. And then I've got you on the 3 pieces of paper. So the rapid release. So that 3 pieces of paper on the back of your camera, and that should be, where is that on Bonnie's, the back of Bonnie's camera? Oh, right here. See your L with the 3 pieces of paper?
I will in a minute. Hang on. Bear with me. Oh,
Or you might even have a 3 pieces of paper icon somewhere on the back of the camera.
3 pieces of paper.
It's this one, right? It's this little icon right here.
Okay, I'm sure I have it. What's it? What would it be called? Area mode?
It's called your release.
Metering, no.
And you should have said it. It was on the handout that I gave you.
I probably did, but I don't even know how, that's before I knew what I was even doing. 3 pieces of paper. All right, let me go look again.
On top of each other. Or you might just have one square, Bonnie, if you moved anything.
Yep, would it be under the flash? No.
No, look on the thing that I just showed you. It's this icon right here.
Okay, it must be somewhere else.
So push your info button and scroll around on your back display panel.
All right. Oh, I don't know. Now I've messed myself up here.
Okay, that's okay. We'll come back to it, okay?
No,
Just remember what I'm talking about.
All right.
Okay, so this 3 pieces of paper, Rudy, on your camera, and Bonnie, you've got the same thing in that second line.
Oh, I found it. It's
Good.
here.
Good.
Okay, single frame release mode.
Right, but I want you to be not in the single frame, but in the 3 pieces of paper.
All right.
Okay. That is, as long as you hold your button down, the camera will keep taking pictures. So you
Okay.
can hold the button down and it'll just keep taking pictures, one right after the other, depending on your shutter speed. So depending on how fast your shutter speed is how fast your camera can actually take one picture after the other.
All right.
Rudy, you've also got a 3 pieces of paper with an H, and that means it's going to fire even faster when you're on the 3 pieces of paper with the H. So once again, that going back to that hawk on a branch that leans over and poops, so I know he's going to start flying off that branch. If I'm smart, I'll move from the 3 pieces of paper to the 3 pieces of paper with an H. Once again, knowing where your buttons are and knowing how to push them. Because then that would allow me to fire even faster. So we don't want to be on the 1 piece of paper icon. We want to be on the 3 pieces of paper on top of each other. Or if we're going to fire really fast, so your kid is getting ready to run across the finish line in a foot race, then you might want to be on the H so that you can take more pictures than 1. Or you're outside watching your dog run around the yard like crazy, then you might want to be on the H so that you can take more pictures at one time. So that's what those 3 pieces of paper for. They're called your release modes. And then you all are all on one focus point right now, right?
Correct.
Right.
Right. You need to learn how to move those around fast so that you're putting these on the face of your subject. But there are certain times when we're going to be on clusters. So we would be on a cluster in the event that we were, let's say we were photographing the Blue Angels. You know, they're moving really, really fast. And chances are we're not going to be able to keep one individual focus point on one airplane. So we might go to a cluster so that it can just hopefully focus on one of the airplanes. So sometimes we're going to be on one, most of the time we're going to be on one individual focus point, but then sometimes we're going to be on a cluster. Make sense?
Yes.
And y'all can work on that one. Okay. Now, flash, I gave you a little bit of an introduction with your pop-up flash. That pop-up flash will go about 6 to 10 feet, but it's not very powerful. So eventually you might want to buy a flash. And Bonnie, for the Nikons, you would buy an SB500. And Rudy, for your Canon, do you own a flash already, Rudy?
I do have a flash, but I'm gonna get a more professional. It's a little.
Okay. Rudy, you want to buy the Canon 430 EX3 or 2.
Okay.
And if you want a real good flash used that doesn't cost a lot of money, the 430 EX2 is probably about $250. And to me, it is just a dynamite flash. So Bonnie, yours is the SB500 and Rudy, yours is the 430 EX. If you look at this photograph of the young lady, look at the ground and you'll notice that there's really harsh shadows on the ground. You see that?
Mhm.
But I'm using a flash. You can't really tell I'm using a flash. And that's because the flash goes out, hits the subject, and then turns off. And then that flash then filled in the shadows around her face so that we don't have a whole lot of shadows on her face. So that flash is a really, really good tool to use. And I've got a class just on how to use your flash coming up if you'd like to sign up for that. You notice the young guy here at the wedding. I'm using a flash, but you don't notice I'm using a flash because I'm using it with a balanced light meter. You notice the flash when the light meter is not balanced. When the light meter is balanced, you won't notice the flash. It's very subtle. And with this young fellow at the wedding, you notice that I positioned him so that the lights are in the background. So anytime you can put your subject up against a lighted background, you know, like those decorative little white lights we have all over the place, and then blow those out of focus, you see that it just makes the background look a whole lot better. So use your flash, and you use your flash with a balanced light meter, and then you'll see that it just goes out and kisses the subject and then turns off. So these top mounted flashes are a really, really good thing to have. And then in the event that you are in a situation where it's fairly dark, like your house, this is a Guinea cat, or not really a cat, he's a mongoose, but a Guinea in Africa. And it's an interesting animal, and it comes out at night in one of the restaurants where we eat, and it hunts for insects and things up in the rafters. Well, you know, if there's a cool little wild animal like this running around, I'm going to take a picture of it. So this is that shutter priority 60th of a second. Pop up your flash or put your good top mounted flash on there. And then wherever you focus on the eye of this animal, then that flash is going just to the eye of the animal and turning off. And so this is shutter priority 60th of a second and using the flash. So that, you know, when you're in a low light situation, you can resort to that 60th of a second. Which flash do you have, Rudy?
So I have a flash. It's a TT560. It was just it's a newer NEEWER. It's an off-brand.
Yeah, it's an off-brand, and test it and see how it works. But you're going to get better results with a Canon, but that might hold you over for now.
Yes.
And once again, that 430 EX2, you can probably pick one of those up used for not very much money. It's just a good workhorse flash.
In between the 2 and the 3, should I just go for the 3? Is it?
You know, I think the 3 is over-engineered.
Okay.
And now it's good,
Yes.
but I think it's over-engineered. But if you, you know, if the difference in the money makes any difference, then get the 2. If the difference in the money doesn't make any difference, then get the 3. Yeah,
Okay.
it's good technology. So I just think it's over-engineered. They made it a little too complicated for me. And then if you want to do photos again outside at night, like this one with the lady up against the lighted trees, 60th of a second, focus on her, use your flash, put her against a lighted background so that we've got some area filled in the photograph, and just have fun photographing. So that shutter priority 60th of a second. And by the way, you don't even need to go to shutter priority. You can set your f-stop 5.6 in manual, 60th of a second. Light meter is not going to balance, but the flash is going to take care of the subject. So it's good technology. Use that flash also just for interesting things. So when I was working on the Back Roads of Texas book, I had to travel all over Texas, no matter what the weather was, no matter what the conditions were. And I was up in Amarillo to photograph the Cadillac Ranch, and it was blowing snow. It was horrible. It was freezing cold.
Wow.
And so I'm trying to figure out how in the heck do I make this look like a great tourist attraction? And these people with this real nice dog walked up, and I put the dog in the photo, asked them if I could photograph their dog in front of a, you know, anybody, you know, do something different. And the flashes allow you to twist the top of them so we can angle them. And then I'm focused over on the side of the frame on the dog. The flash is pointing in that direction toward the dog. So now the flash knows go over and hit the dog and turn off. And lo and behold, the flash also, some of the spillover went and hit all the metallic paint on those cars and lit the cars up. So sometimes you get some interesting little spillover effects from your flash as well. And then to add light, you can also use what's called a reflector. So a 5-in-1 reflector is a round disc. Mine's 24 inches wide, and it has silver on one side and gold on the other side to reflect light. This lady has a pink complexion. So we would use silver on her. If somebody had an olive complexion like I do, then we would use gold on them. And then there's window light coming in from the side right here up on the top. And then we put the reflector underneath her face and reflected sunlight back up on her face. And you notice that it's very soft light. So a reflector adds wonderful light to, especially to the female subjects. And I use them a lot in the garden as well. So they're a real nice light source. And they look like this, 5-in-1 reflector, cost $29.95 from Amazon. The diffuser right here is used to put that between the subject and the sun, so we can block some of the sun on the subject if there's a harsh sunlight coming through on the subject and casting shadows. but this is called a 5-in-1 reflector, and get the 24-inch. The one after that is 48 inches, way too big. The one under that is 8 inches and it's way too small. So a 5-in-1 reflector, the 24 inch is a neat thing to have. And here's a before and after picture with the 5-in-1 reflector. So the photograph over on the left that has the harsh shadows, that's natural with no reflector. The one on the right, we've taken the reflector and it's just leaning on a wall right behind her, and it's reflecting against her and filling in all of those shadows. So sometimes when we photograph, it's just not the greatest light in the world, and we've got to do whatever we can to make it look better. So
Where's
that 5-in-1 reflector is good.
the reflectors behind her?
It's behind her off to the side. It's leaning
Oh.
on a wall.
Oh,
Yeah.
off to the side. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's close to her, but you know, it's leaning on a wall.
But
Yeah.
it is affecting her face, right?
Mhm, you can see it on her face because
I
I'm
see.
angling the reflector so that it's hitting her face.
So what did you use, gold or silver on her?
I think on her I used gold.
Gold, okay.
Yeah, yeah. You know, you can use either way, but just play with it. It's just very, very. It's got a great quality to the
Right.
light.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then there's another thing in photography called flat to the film plane. And from the back of your camera, that's where the sensor is. Your depth of field is absolutely parallel to the back of the camera. So when you use 5.6, that 5.6 is a parallel plane to the back of the camera. And if you tilt your camera like this, your depth of field goes like this. And if you tilt your camera like this, how do I do it for you? There you go. Your depth of field goes like this. So no matter how you tilt your camera, that's where your depth of field goes. So when you're photographing something like these water drops on this canna lily, then I have my camera absolutely parallel to those 4 water drops to maximize my shallow depth of field, because you notice the interior of the flower is out of focus. The little tendril over on the left-hand side is out of focus. So I've got my camera absolutely parallel to that subject. Same thing with this owl-eye butterfly at the Cockerel Butterfly Center. I've got the camera absolutely parallel to that subject, and that maximizes my depth of field. And you can see it here with this caiman down in Pantanal, Brazil. I'm using an f8 and I'm focusing on the tip of his snout. And you see where the focus drops off right down there about the middle of his snout. So that means, you know, I've kind of got about that much depth of field. But if I get absolutely parallel to the caiman, now the same f-stop 8, it looks like the whole caiman's in focus.
Wow, yeah.
So it's called flat to the film plane. So you'll do it as one of your homework assignments to tilt the camera and then also go flat parallel to the camera. And then tripods, this is the one that I recommend. I should have bought stock in this company years ago when they first sent it to me. This is a MePhoto Globetrotter classic carbon fiber tripod. It cost about $319. There are different models of MePhoto, but this is a MePhoto Globetrotter classic carbon fiber. It weighs 3.5 pounds, but it extends to about 5 feet 8 inches. So it extends pretty high. And then the neat thing about this tripod is it comes with a ball head. And that's what we use in photography. We don't use those 3 handles. We use the ball head. And it comes with these plates that screw onto the bottom of your camera. And these plates are what are called Arca Swiss plates. So once you screw them onto your camera and Allen wrench them on your camera, most of the time they won't come off the bottom of your camera. So you just buy them for your camera and forget about them. So the tripod comes self-contained. You can buy more plates as you need them, but it extends to about 5 feet 8 again. But when it folds up, you can fold it up to a little over 1.5 feet. So this is what goes, when I fold it up and I travel, this is the last thing in my suitcase, on the top of my suitcase. And once again, it's only 3 pounds and it's only about 1.5 feet. So it's really, really sturdy, very well made. And and the good thing too about this one is it comes in lots of different colors. So where it's silver here, it comes in blue, orange, red, yellow, green, black, gold. So it comes in all kinds of different colors as well. So kind of an interesting variety. So this is a good tripod. Questions on tripods?
No.
No? Okay, so it's a good tripod. And then lenses. If you take your arms and you stretch them all the way out to your side, parallel with your body, and then you move your head all the way to one finger to the next finger, that 180-degree field of view, that is equivalent to a 10 to 22 millimeter lens. So that's the 10 millimeter. If you go to a full frame sensor camera, that's a 16 millimeter lens. And this is the lens that you need for landscape photography. So a 10 to 22, that's what you need for landscape photography. The neat thing about this lens as well is that it focuses very close. Do you have one, Rudy?
I do.
The 10 to 22?
I have the 10 to 22. Yes.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. You got a good camera bag there. It's got the necessary stuff in it. So that 10 to 22, the neat thing about that is that this is not for people. This is for landscapes, grand landscapes at that, night photography, doing, streets and that type of stuff. But if you tilt it up, you can exaggerate the sky. If you tilt it down, you can exaggerate the foreground. So this is a lens where we use it off axis many times. And then I can get that wide angle lens right down in the bluebonnet field and still see the sky. It focuses really close. So this is a really, really nice lens for using in your landscape photography. So this is a lens I really recommend you have in your bag. And then this is just a little short GIF video of every lens I could get my hands on one day, all the way to 500 back to 10. And you notice as I change each one of the lenses, the field of view changes all the way to 500. And 10, you can't even see that little house way off in the distance that I get to at 500. So each lens that you own does something different. And you don't just buy a lens because you want that lens. You buy a lens because you need that lens. You need it for your photography. So every lens that you have in your camera bag should have a purpose. It's like wrenches or screwdrivers. They're tools. They should have a purpose. So that wide angle, medium telephoto that you all are using right now, and then maybe a telephoto depending on what you all are doing in your class, in your work and what you want to do with your photography. But something, yeah, go ahead.
My dad has this lens, but I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't know what he uses it for. He bought it for a purpose, but it's how do I identify it? It's 18-55 millimeters.
So 18 to 55 is a basic lens that came with the camera.
Oh, it came with
Yeah,
it.
so that's
Right,
it. It's
right.
a basic lens that came with the camera.
Yeah, he has another lens. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then that lens you were just using, that 75 to 200, that's
Right.
not wide enough for landscapes or people photography or that type of thing. You got to be pretty far away from people, and it's got a lot of telephoto on it. Which lens was that you had in your hand, Rudy?
Oh, I just grabbed them. I realized I actually have 10 to 18 millimeters.
10 to 18. Yeah, it's kind of like the 10 to 22, but it's 10 to 18. Yeah, exactly. Now, something about each one of your lenses that you saw it a little bit in your homework, but there's what's called the bokeh of a lens. It's the quality of the blown out background. So that 18 to 55, Bonnie, that your dad had, that little lens, this is the 18 to 55 as well. And I went ahead and I zoomed out to 55. And this is just an ornament I put up in my office. and I'm looking out of my window. You can see the window screen right there. And this is looking out at the street going, back into the neighborhood. And it's at f4, and that's the quality of the blown out background. So not bad.
Mhm.
But if I put the 50 millimeter lens on, and I think Rudy, you have one of these, don't you?
Yeah, that's the
This
one.
is this is known for this really, really pretty background. So if I put the 50 millimeter on and leave it at f4, so still at f4, then this is the quality of background it gets. Where the 18 to 55, that's the quality of background that it got. So you see how we've got a better quality of blown out background. But then if I go to a top of the line Canon lens in the professional line, this is the 70 to 200 f4, and I zoomed out to 200 f4, and that's the quality of the blown out background. So you see the difference in the bokeh, the quality in the blown out background. So many times we're investing in a lens because it gives us this beautiful background. So all of them at an f4, but just difference in the quality of that background based on what lens we're using.
And is that common to use like 70 to 200 is the telephoto, so just zooming in real close and then blowing it out using that method?
You know what this lens is really good for is 90 millimeters is where there's no distortion on the face.
Okay.
So this 70 to 200 is really, really beautiful as a face lens.
Okay.
And it's really beautiful because we get this really nice blown out background to it. It's got that very softness to the background. But then we zoom in on somebody at that 90 millimeters, and then you don't have to get real close to them either, but it does focus pretty close. But this gives you a nice kind of working distance for people. I love it for flowers in the garden. I love it for macro photography. I love it for butterflies in the garden because I don't have to get real close, and it's a lightweight little lens. It's pricey. It's going to be $1,200, but it definitely gives you good results. Very, very pretty. And remember, you can always rent one of these and try it to see if you like it. So Photo Rental Source over in Katy, you can always rent one of these just to see if you like it before you buy it. Okay, that's what I've got for you all tonight. You've still got some homework assignments in your handout, some things that you can work on. And then classes, Rudy was in Introduction to Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw last night with me. I've got intentional camera movement coming up. Crystal ball photography is coming up. So these are all just classes where I teach you just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. If you want to travel, there's still some openings on the Costa Rica trip. It's in February, it begins February 2nd. So if you want to go on that one, you better hurry up. The whale trip to Alaska has still got a couple of openings on that one as well. We're going to Romania for birds in May. I'm positive we're going to get through this COVID thing and we're going to get back to traveling. And I just did the Hill Country birds trip, but there's another one in March that has some openings on it too. So I've got weekend workshops, I've got the regular classes, and then if you want to travel with me on the tours, then you're welcome to do that as well. Once again, here's all my contact information. Anytime you're spending money on equipment, if you ever want to ask my opinion, drop me an email. And if I'm here, I'll get right back to you because I'd like to see you buy right the first time and not waste your money. And I'd like to see you buy as good a quality as you can the first go around. So anytime you've got any questions on equipment, please feel free to ask me anytime. So questions?
Great. Are all the dates and everything on your website?
Everything's on my website. Yep.
I went to Romania right before the lockdown, January, February, to go wolf tracking.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fabulous country. It's an amazing country. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Lots of fun.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I have a question as far as equipment.
Go.
It's a little bit off topic, but between them, I'm not gonna get mirrorless now because I need to work on the basics. But between the Canon R5 and the R6 for a professional like myself who doesn't make a living using the,
Yeah. I did a video on it because I own them both.
okay,
And I thought when I bought the R5 that the R5 was going to be top of the line and the R6 was going to be inferior. And there isn't any difference between those two cameras except the file size. So I did a whole video on it. If you want to see it, it's on my YouTube channel.
okay, I'll go check it out.
Because I just shot these cameras over and over and over again, same subject, over and over and over again. I was trying to figure out why in the world Canon made these two cameras, because they're so similar. And the only thing that I could come up with is that that R5 sensor is so big that if you need to crop, and I crop birds a fairly good amount, if you're going to crop a lot, then that R5 is your camera. But if you're not going to crop a lot, go with the R6 and save the money.
Okay,
Because I really, feature wise, speed wise, I can't see much difference at all. There's different in video, but we're not shooting that much video.
okay,
But you know, if you go with an R6, you're saving nearly $1,000.
yes, it's a big price difference.
And so if, you know, if when you're ready to go mirrorless, it really is a different technology. It really is pretty interesting and a lot of fun, but you're going to have to buy new lenses. And so you're going to have to think about this as selling equipment and buying new equipment, and selling equipment and buying a new equipment. That's what I did in 2020. I started selling everything I owned. And then gradually, as I could acquire a new piece of mirrorless camera, I picked it up.
Okay,
So, you know, it was a whole year for me to eventually buy the equipment. But I don't own any digital SLR stuff right now. I only own mirrorless.
okay,
Yeah. And it is cool. There are times when I wish I had my digital SLR back. Because we're in new technology. So there still are some things that don't work as well as I'd like them to, but it is cool. It is pretty cool stuff though.
okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
That's it for me.
Okay. I hope to see you in another class one day soon, or on a workshop or something one day soon. Feel free to contact me anytime, ask me questions anytime you want to. My blog's got all kinds of stuff on it. If you're not on Facebook, and if you're on Facebook and you haven't made friends with me, go ahead and make friends with me so we can keep in touch. And otherwise, I hope to see you again another time soon. Okay.
I saw your purple Martin photo in the Chronicle.
Yeah. Yeah. Every Saturday for the last almost 22 years. Yeah. Pretty amazing.
Kathy,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Bye, Rudy.
Super. Good night, guys. I'll share the recording with you tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye.
Bye.